Hello, it's quiz time. As a result of the 2024 UK general election, how many new MPs are there in the House of Commons? Your time's up, it's 335, and we're going to meet three of them to find out how their first few months in politics has gone on this episode of Newscast, the BBC's daily news podcast. Well, we're joined by Rosie Wrighting from Labour. Hello, Rosie.
Hiya, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Ben Obese-Jecty from the Conservatives. Hello.
Hello.
And Pippa Heylings from the Liberal Democrats. Hello.
Hi.
Ben, of course, we first met on the day the election was called on the London Underground.
We did. I recognised you, doorstepped you.
Yeah, that's the wrong way around. I should be doorstepping you.
And yeah, we had a little chat. It was quite an exciting day. One of which I didn't realise would then lead to this point. But yeah, it's good.
Did it surprise you that the election was called that day?
To be honest, it didn't surprise me that much. I've been. As a candidate, you are absolutely paranoid about when the election's going to be called, whether you've got all your ducks in a row, and I've been keeping a very close eye on things. And I had a feeling it was building towards that. I think that might have just been luck more than judgment, because having spoken to people subsequently, people have said, no, there's no way you could have known. It was called very quickly. So yeah, it was exciting.
And Rosie, there's this idea that Labour had been ready to go at like a moment's notice. Was that right?
I mean, there was definitely there was speculation there might be a May election, so we were ready to go for May. And yeah, we had everything ready for the moment the election was called. But I will say, probably unlike Ben, I wasn't exactly expecting that day. I mean, I was sitting in my office, I was working in a retail head office, and yeah, if someone had told me that morning that the election was going to be called, I probably wouldn't have believed them.
Yeah.
But straight away, as soon as it was called, I think that we were in our constituencies campaigning.
And Pippa, how long had you been? Because there was this massive iceberg coming. It was just whether the iceberg was going to hit in like January, May, July, November, the following January. Had this been dominating your life for like a couple of years?
Yeah. So we did look at some of our target seats, as you'll have known. And so we were out sort of quite early saying you have to be out there, showing that you're the contender, the main contender. So can you be out there in the news? Can people recognise you, see that you're a viable option? And so I've been out there since, the end of sort of November 2021. So this is kind of,
the long game.
Long game. So it's going to be a long time to get to this point, but it's fantastic.
Well, welcome all of you. You all have to do your maiden speeches, which is the first time you stand up in the House of Commons. Would you like to do like a mini maiden now and just explain your constituency and who you are to Newscast listeners in a sort of but not as long as a maiden speech, like a short, like a TikTok version?
Yeah, unlike the maiden speech, I when I did my maiden speech, I accidentally spoke in first person, and I remember straight away. I think it was Deputy Speaker was like, "You cannot do that." So that was a learning curve. But no, my constituency's in Northamptonshire. It's Kettering. It's where I was born and raised. My mum's still there as a local youth worker. I've spent my career in the private sector. So I've worked in retail, starting on the shop floor and moving up to a buying team at an e-commerce retailer. What got me into politics, I think, is that all I really knew was the last Conservative government. It's all I had in my adulthood, and
because we should say you're one of the youngest MPs.
Yes. I was elected at 26, and I felt like the pandemic was during my education. Wasn't able to get on the housing ladder, trying to build a career in the midst of a cost of living crisis. These are all things that I dealt with, and I felt that I wanted to be a part of the change. So I started campaigning for it, and now I'm lucky to be sat here today as a Labour MP.
Do you want to tell us a fascinating fact about Kettering?
I think, when I first mention Kettering to people that don't know it, the first thing they say is, "Have you met James Acaster?" Because he mentions Kettering in a lot of...
And have you?
I have met
Okay,
James.
good. Podcasting royalty.
Yes. So that's the kind of top thing that people bring. But what I said in my speech as well is it's very often mispronounced as Kettering. But actually, if you're from there, it's Kettering.
So it's 2 syllables, not 3.
Yeah, so that's how you know how well someone knows it, by how they pronounce it.
Pro tip. Good. Next time I'm in Kettering. Ben?
So I am the new Member of Parliament for Huntingdon, which is in Cambridgeshire. So it's quite close to Pippa's, one of my neighbours. For those people who aren't quite aware where Huntingdon is, it's sort of in the middle of Peterborough, Cambridge and Bedford, sort of in the middle of that triangle. It is part of the historic county of Huntingdonshire. It also has had some fairly fairly famous former members of Parliament.
Sir John Major.
Sir John Major, indeed. And one, Oliver Cromwell as well, was also the Member of Parliament for Huntingdon. So some fairly big shoes to fill there. In terms of an interesting and fun fact about the constituency, it is the home of the sandwich. Lord John Montagu, the Earl of Sandwich, inventor of the sandwich, had his family home in Huntingdon. And I've sat at the card table in the mayor's office that he used to sit at when he used to order his pieces of salted beef between toasted bread.
Well, you know what's coming next, don't you?
I don't.
It's that Kemi Badenoch did that interview last week where she said she doesn't like sandwiches.
Well,
have you discussed that with her, with your great leader?
We've yet to have a sort of a face-to-face about this, about the importance of the sandwich to my constituency. But she's clearly just never had a Huntingdon sandwich. That's all it will take to win her over.
But isn't it weird though that you've got a leader now who's anti-sandwich, and your previous leader Rishi Sunak, he said his favourite food was sandwiches.
I think it just shows,
times changed.
It shows the changes we've made as a party.
Right, Pippa, go.
So I'm the MP for South Cambridgeshire, and just like Rosie, in terms of my maiden speech, I actually, it was just after it that I made one of these big faux pas where the whole place just goes silent, and you think, oh my God, what did I do? And I clapped. And did you know you can do anything? You make laws. You're above the law when you're in the chamber. As the chief parliamentary standards officer said, you are extraordinary when you are in the chamber. And and somebody mentioned Ed Davies, Secretary of State, and having really launched offshore wind. I went yes, and the place just went. And I got this tap on my shoulder. It was like, you don't clap. So you can do this, you can, but you can't do that. So that was it. And in my maiden speech, so South Cambridgeshire, as Ben was saying, so we've got sort of Cambridgeshire seats, which are a ring, and I called it my maiden speech, this golden donut around Cambridge City. So that's golden now because we've won 3 Lib Dem seats. We've taken those off the Conservatives. With the jam is red in the middle, which is Labour, holds Cambridge City. So I didn't say we were about to squeeze that out of the middle of the donut. But
jam donuts, when you eat them, the jam does come sort of spurting out. So that's quite a good metaphor for your
all sorts of images of Daniel Zeichner now.
So it's a little bit, but we're not going there. We're definitely not going there pre-Christmas on this type of family show. But the I think what was interesting was one of the, I think it was BBC News, Cambridgeshire, sort of said, and the South Cambridgeshire constituency, that constituency with no towns. And it was like, that was the headline. And it's so actually South Cambridgeshire is home to Europe's largest biomedical research community. I mean, it is a massive contributor to the UK economy. That was where we helped in terms of the COVID vaccine, and also found out very, very quickly how we can determine the variants, worked out really fast that actually what was happening in the care homes was because of, the variants. So they used their big AI data, their genomics data, their incredible work on life sciences. So I'm very proud that this is now, it means challenges because it's fast growing, fast changing, but it's incredible.
In terms of your previous lives, so Pippa, I mean, you've done lots of you were a mediator, you worked with the UN, you've done a lot of climate change stuff. What from your old life do you still do now in your very different new life?
Yeah, so, really honoured to be appointed as the Liberal Democrat spokesperson on climate change. So that's, opposite number is Ed Miliband on energy security and net zero. And that's, on the one hand, there was no way, a bit like Rosie, I couldn't not want to stand when I saw what was happening in terms of breaking the political consensus by Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives, having been those who brought forward the climate change law, to then go back on all of this.
He didn't necessarily break the consensus, though, did he? He put back some of the targets for things like petrol and diesel cars.
We are so off track. So it was really, everybody wanted to see that we could actually, 80% of people polled said they wanted us to do more on climate change. And yet we were veering towards a very small group who were sort of anti-net zero. So for me, that was coming in. It's great to see Labour really powering ahead on clean power and saying that's what they want to do. And we're just now able to come in and say we can do and even more. And that's actually making sure that we bring the local community voice into this. So in terms of the mediation, it's like, I'm hoping that we can bring much more of that. I'm loving this cross-party stuff where we can actually get in, and that's on bill committees, the Great British Energy Bill Committee, Environmental Audit Committee, I'm a member of that as well, and on the all-party parliamentary groups. I'm seeing much more that people don't see, where there's some serious work going on between backbenchers as well about how we do things well.
Would you be willing to make a pledge here on this festive newscast saying that you will always put the national interest ahead of party politics? That seems to be kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think. Well, I coming back from a mediator
Can't
point,
wait
having
to
worked with
play this
government,
back to you in future years.
so I think there's always a way
Heylings
through.
leadership run.
Well, I think there's always a way in which that's what my life has been about mediation. It's about how we get everyone around the table, because there are always ways through where we can get, the national interest won, whilst we all gain what we're trying to seek for on behalf of people. So that's why I'm in politics, is to bring that community voice around really complex, tough decisions.
But isn't the thing about Westminster, though, that politics often wins over doing sometimes the right thing for the country?
Well, I
Do you
think
think that is
lots
the
of
case?
others standing to hopefully be able to show that it can be different.
Okay, well, we've got a few years to see. Ben, you've done lots of things in your previous lives, whether it's the military, whether it's financial services. What's the thing that is consistent now, even though you're doing something very different?
I feel like politics calls back much more to my career in the military than it does to my career in financial services. I mean, financial services was very much working for big corporations, big banks, being a small cog in a big machine, and feeling quite frustrated at that probably, and that your relative inability to make a difference. I think the military is much more sort of obviously based on service, and that chimes much more with a role as a parliamentarian, and so I think that's what I feel myself calling back to. I feel that sort of it almost feels like a career in financial services was a blip. Sort of like I left the military, went in that direction, and thought actually this isn't for me, and it just takes a long time to get into politics. So I think sort of my time in the army, my time as an army officer, time on operations, and that sort of that aspect of leadership, of making decisions and striking out and being responsible for your own opinions and decisions is a key one.
The military is also very hierarchical, and you have to follow orders from your superiors. And actually, the thing about being a backbench MP is that quite often you're just following instructions from the party hierarchy. Are you okay with that?
I don't. It's funny. I mean, yes, I don't disagree that that's sort of part of politics. I don't feel that we've necessarily. I don't think we're as tightly whipped as perhaps the Labour MPs are in terms of our ability to sort of branch out, do our own things. We've been encouraged, because there was comparatively few of us this time, particularly in the new intake. Very much encouraged to get on the front foot, get out there straight away. Most of us had done our maiden speeches within the sort of the first 2 to 3 weeks of being an MP, which was much quicker than normal. But obviously they needed us to be able to contribute in the chamber as much as anything else. But it made us push ourselves sort of out of that comfort zone and just get stuck into parliamentary life. And I think what I've really learned is that the best experience you can get in terms of developing as a parliamentarian is spending time in the chamber, watching other people who are very, very good at it and how they operate, and just working out sort of how your style is going to be within that arena.
Yeah, because there were only 26 new Conservative MPs, weren't there? I suppose Kemi Badenoch's whole big thing is that she wants to kind of start from the ground up. So rather than picking some policies and then selling them, she wants to just do a kind of intellectual interrogation of what being a Conservative is now. So I suppose that's probably quite an exciting thing to be part of.
I think it is. Yeah, it is.
You've
It is
got
quite
ideas?
exciting. I mean, I think it'd be very easy to launch a kind of a manifesto now, and then to have to stick with it for 4 years. A lot can change in 4 years, as we saw in the previous 4 years. I think realistically, it took probably Keir Starmer a couple of years to get to a point where he was in a comfortable position as Labour leader, but that bore no relation to what he announced when he was standing for the leadership and his initial pledge. So I think you can go in
Well,
there.
no, he would say, well, we'll let Rosie do the political stuff.
But
the whole Keir is a flip-flopper.
But I think my point was sort of try not to be too political about it. But I think my point is that you will evolve over those 2 years. Things will change. The environment around you will change, and what you announce when you first become leader will not necessarily be what's still relevant in 2 years' time. So I think it's a sensible choice to take a little bit of time and to frankly to earn the right to be heard again. I think people are quite interested in what we have to say as the opposition, but they're not on tenterhooks. And so I think we need to take that kind of that deep breath and that check pace, and then effectively when we get to a point where we're comfortable, then to have something really important to say.
And Rosie, how does it feel having to? So you're not a minister yet. Would you like to be a minister one day?
I think I'm focused on my constituency.
Correct answer at this stage of your career. But it's that thing of like, okay, you're a Labour MP, but you're not in government. And so sometimes you must be sort of trying to kind of lobby the government to do what you want. You've also got to go out and defend the government, even though you're not the one in the room making the decisions. Plus, as you just said, you've got to stand up for your constituents. You've got to do a lot of things simultaneously. And actually, some things you don't have a great amount of control over.
I think, like Ben said, there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of people who are coming into Parliament from different backgrounds. I think it's fantastic that we have an institution where you can come from the military into Parliament and use that experience, and we have that on our side as well. And there's a lot of people who have a lot that they want to change, but I think Pippa is right. There's a lot that goes on that people don't see, like bill committees, select committees, APPGs, cross-party working. So there is room for people's voices to be heard, and especially if they do have that expertise or that experience in a specific area that they can really hone in on. You're right. I spend a lot of time in my constituency hearing what people want me to go back to Parliament and relay, and there is room for that as well. And part of the challenge of being a new MP is figuring out, to be honest, how that all works, and how best to go about things, and how best to use your time in the chamber or on a committee. That's what I've spent the last 6 months doing.
And do you feel that Keir Starmer, your party leader, and the Prime Minister and your boss, does he feel like quite a distant figure? Because I always think in Westminster, sometimes as a political journalist, I was like, oh, I get to see the Prime Minister more often than you do as a backbencher, because there's so many of you, and the PM like goes into the chamber for those big things. It's not like you can have a little chat on the way in. Do you feel sometimes he's a bit far away from you?
I think, a Prime Minister is a busy job, and I'm not saying that, we would expect necessarily a lot of exposure to Keir Starmer, or there's many constituents that want their voices heard, but there is opportunity to speak to ministers, to make your voices heard, and to put across the needs of your constituents as well. We've been, as Labour MPs, we've been invited to Number 10, and for me, I have come into Parliament as a party of government, but there are many MPs that sat in opposition for a long time, and they've been waiting for this moment to have access to speak to ministers and really put across what they want for their constituency, and there's opportunities to do that.
We've mentioned a couple of times you getting slight taps on the wrists for breaking parliamentary convention. What do you think needs to change about how Parliament operates?
Ooh, that's a topic of conversation at the moment, definitely within our party and with others as well, especially with new MPs and kind of younger MPs. And so there's a modernisation committee, talking about one of these cross-party committees that's there. So, there are things at the moment where, you're trying to get back to your constituency or to your family, or, you've got caring responsibilities, and then you're finding out that the votes will start, a bit later than planned, so maybe like 6 or 7. And then you find out that kind of Conservatives helpfully have put 7 amendments down. But then what we're looking at is like each amendment, we're totting up 15 minutes because the amendment's called, you've got to all somehow get through, over the benches, out of the doors, into the right division lobby, hopefully tap in and then be counted around. And then you come back in, wait for the number, and then you do it again. And you can imagine lots of people go, couldn't we just sort of do them all together, and couldn't we sort of digitally do them? Press a button? Couldn't we, even if they're all together, let's cluster them together or something? Because that then meant, if you think about that, 7 amendments, 15 minutes each, we're actually then saying, well, that's a couple of hours before, and people going, well, I've missed my last train home, that means then impacting on what you've ever got planned. So I think there's something there, a little something there, that perhaps we could look at. And we've got, obviously, so our wonderful Jenny, who's our 73rd MP, who's the guide dog for our Steve Darling MP.
Is that his name?
Jenny.
Oh, I didn't know.
She's like our therapy dog, isn't she gorgeous? But
she's more famous than some of you guys are.
I know.
So she has got her own page and Instas and whatever. But actually, can you imagine what that's like? So accessibility has not changed. It has not changed. So that is a serious issue. So when we're doing all of that, that is not easy for people who've got, we're living with disability. Yeah.
Ben, would you defend some of those old-fashioned procedures?
As a whip, I would say that some the voting procedure is there's real merits to the way that it's done currently, and to Rosie's point, getting access to those ministers who you don't see all the time, you don't see every day, you will see them in the voting lobby. So if you need to doorstep them for that important 30-second conversation, so will you support my pledge for X, Y, or Z?
It's a bit like a mosh pit.
That's potentially one of your only opportunities to do that. So I think there's real
you would
merit.
defend that. that.
I would defend that, but I have my own frustrations about things. I mean, sort of it is surprisingly difficult to speak in Parliament, and that's from our side where there's fewer of us. From your side, it must be a nightmare.
Just explain why that is.
So there's a couple of different ways that you'll speak. You'll either speak in a debate or you'll speak during departmental questions. Departmental questions, everyone puts in for those online, and then a shuffle is conducted, and then the names that appear on the order paper are the ones that get to ask a question. I think I'm in the top 10 for Conservative MPs for putting in questions. I've only ever had 2 on an order paper. There are people who've had more PMQs than I've had questions across all departments. There are people in my party who haven't had a single parliamentary question selected. And so in that case, your only option is, if you're not on the order paper, is to go in and bob. And bobbing is when you see everyone standing up and down. And
pelvic floor muscle kind of.
Quite,
good workout.
Great quad workout. Great quad workout. But you'll see if there's a question that's relevant to the question you want to ask, and then you'll bob on that, and you have to try and catch a speaker's eye, and it's just I've been quite successful at doing that, relatively speaking, but it is quite frustrating for a lot of people who don't get a chance to do that. The flip side of that is speaking during debates. If it's a popular debate, I know that from my position, I'm unlikely to be called particularly high up the order. I'm not a select committee chair. I'm not a right honourable. I don't have a knighthood. So already sort of where you're going to sit in the pecking order. So potentially you're going to be there for hours and may not even be called. And I'm not saying that we should have call lists, because I don't agree with that either. But it is frustrating to think that you could potentially be there for 5 hours, bobbing up and down, as I found during the winter fuel payments debate, and still not get to speak.
Yeah, because I think people don't realise what a big number 650 is, because that's the number of how many of you there are, and because we only see the tip of the iceberg on TV, and actually there's a lot of you. Rosie, is there something else that people don't understand or maybe don't appreciate about how Parliament works that you would like them to know better?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has really been a learning curve, learning the procedures of Parliament, because I worked in the fashion industry. So to go from quite a modern, high-tech, fast-moving industry into Parliament was very, very different. And yeah, to echo what Ben has said, it can be quite a task to manage your diary when you just simply don't really know when you're going to get called, or what if you bob, you might not, and when.
And
in
also,
the debate,
you guys are all kind of like small business people, aren't you? Because you have to hire your own staff and run your own office. It's not like there's a big kind of like corporate back office that can give you some researchers. You've got to hire those people.
Or you plan to speak in a debate, and then there's an urgent question and 3 statements, and the whole thing gets pushed back by 4 hours. Yeah. And then suddenly and then all the meetings your whole day is just shot.
Yeah.
So.
And even more so as a Labour MP, because the Speaker tries to make the debates balanced. And there's a lot of us that are really keen to speak in the early days and to practice and make sure that we can get our speaking up in the chamber. So it can be hard, I think, to get in to be able to speak. But that has been a learning curve, is how basically your diary might, at the beginning of the day and halfway through the day, just look completely different based on what happens in the chamber.
Have you witnessed any bad behaviour in Parliament?
I don't know what you class as bad.
Well, yeah, good question. Because I'm just thinking, like, you guys have come in, you've come from the outside world, where things are done in a certain way, and there's HR, and there's like how you have to behave at work. But actually, there's people in Westminster who've been there for quite a long time, and they arrived at a time when it was all just a bit more fluid, and you can get away with more stuff. And I'm just wondering, to me, it sounds like there's more than ever, there's the potential for a clash of cultures there.
I think we all went through behaviour code training, as new MPs, and it was.
Oh, what was that like?
Well, it was quite surprising, the kind of elements that were in it, having been running our own businesses. So I've been in business.
Don't get really drunk and sexually harass somebody.
Yeah, well, I've been in business, been in NGOs, been working alongside, to find out that as an MP, these are seen as essential things that you should actually be taught or trained in, just shows, I think, what the public has felt, which is there's a lot of, there's a lack of trust. We've lost trust in politics, and it's often because of sort of the sleaze, the corruption, the cronyism. And so it was right that training was in place. But, some of the things that, one of the things that I challenged in that training were people sort of saying, well, don't necessarily use the lift because you don't want to put yourself into a situation of risk or vulnerability. And I was
What?
just,
So the training basically says the
they
lift
didn't
could
exactly
be
quite say that. And I said,
Right.
you're not saying that. I called it, and they go, they're not. But we would say to people, think carefully if you're going into. But given that, what I then said to our sort of MPs was, given that we're at the moment about 2 toilets for women to 6 to men, you know, if our lovely male MPs said, well, I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable in a lift. I said, leave the lift. We'll have the lifts because you've got
Right.
to lose, you know.
Yeah.
But just the fact that that's included.
Yeah.
You know, I just think we've got, and as the Parliamentary Standards Officer sort of chief said to us, it's up to us now, because this is really, really worrying for the country, that the level of trust is so low. He said it was dangerously low. And he said that the result of that can be, it's not just sort of apathy, it's disengagement, tear it down stuff. So it's our job to be out in the constituencies, be really visible, saying, actually, this is your close contact with what politics is. This is it. It's me. We're out here.
I mean, don't want to be on a real downer point as we get towards the end of this episode, but I mean, Rosie, do you ever feel unsafe in Parliament?
I mean, I'm a young woman, so I feel unsafe in
lots of places,
in
unfortunately,
lots of places, unfortunately. And I think, sadly, when you are a young woman, especially a young woman who's on social media, and potentially people are not the nicest on there as well, you feel exposed in a way that is you're constantly aware of, and that's not necessarily in Parliament, but that's kind of everywhere. I think as well, to Pippa's point, like, when you become an MP, and you alluded to it as well, like, you manage a team of people, and not everyone has actually done that before, and that in itself is a whole new skill set that some MPs have to learn. Basically, running almost like a mini business, a constituency office, a parliamentary office, and there is really not much guidance in terms of how to manage the team.
Even after all the years we've lived through. Right, let's end on a really hopeful note and a really positive Christmassy note. What is one thing you're really proud of doing this year? Maybe it's voting on a big subject, maybe it's helping a constituent. Go for it, Ben.
Oh, put me on the spot there. I think for me, sorry.
You're going to have to learn the self-promotion thing, guys. Like that.
I personally, I'm really proud personally of representing my constituency in Parliament. I've taken loads of opportunities to speak, and I've tried to mention the constituency, and every single time I've managed to have my say in Parliament. I've managed to hold the Chancellor to account. I managed to hold the Deputy Prime Minister to account. I think people in my constituency feel heard, seen, and represented by their new Member of Parliament. And I would hope to be able to continue that all the way through.
I would say that's more of a sort of vibe rather than one particular thing, but I'll let you have it because it's Christmas. Pippa?
Really, really emotional moment, I think, was we had I managed to secure a debate in the chamber, and that was around special educational needs, with particular focus on those living with autism and ADHD. And it came out of lots of representations I had, but one from a teacher of SEND who was questioning the very essence of what she was doing as her profession in mainstreaming, helping a child to go through mainstream with autism, non-verbal autism in primary school, and then being failed at secondary school. And she wrote at the end of her email, it said, I doubt I'll even get a reply to this email, but I just couldn't stand by anymore without speaking out. And I got the debate, and she was in the gallery, and she brought her mum along. And it was just amazing because we met up afterwards, and she was awestruck by the fact that I used her words in the debate, and, you know, to challenge the situation. And it is a national situation. So through her, we've been able to bring this up as a national issue.
Interesting. Rosie?
I think doing the casework, because the politics and the policy is the bigger picture, but day to day casework wins, helping constituents with everything from housing, accessing benefits, like that makes a difference to the place that I was born and raised in, and holding those surgeries, knowing that you can help someone. Yeah, that's my favourite moment of every week.
Great. And do you get a Christmas holiday, or does politics not stop? Do you have those constituents emailing you on Christmas Day?
So we've got definitely, like you say, we've got the staff around us. So we're doing the classic things like who's going to do the Christmas cover. And the Christmas cover will definitely be on urgent things. So we often have people who are at the end of the line. We can't not be available to them. So together with our amazing kind of casework staff as well, we've got a cover over that. So won't be completely off, but we'll definitely be trying to put the phone away and just having a bit of family Christmas. We're listening to Ed Davies' number one single, Love Is Enough. Download it now so that we can do...
Quick rendition?
Yes. Love is enough.
Do you think Ed Davey will make it to Christmas number one? I've lost track of where he actually is.
Yeah.
In
Well, he actually got over Billie Eilish last week, so empowering. So everybody do that because it's for the Young Carers Trust. This is a lovely, it's a kind of our equivalent of the John Lewis lovely sort of, Christmas ad. But do get it because it's bringing that story of that voice that's not heard, young carers, and at Christmas time particularly, give them that bit of joy.
Oh, and what were your party leaders' Christmas cards this year? Did you get one from Cammy?
I've got a stack on my desk I haven't opened, so
Scrooge.
Too busy.
What was on your Christmas card?
Again, I'm not entirely. I think it was a scene. It was a variety of scenes from the constituency. So it depended which one you got.
Rosie, what was Keir Starmer's Christmas card? I haven't received one yet.
I haven't received one yet. But I have to say,
what? Oh no, was that you joking?
That's the one card you've opened.
That's classic House of Commons chamber humour there.
But one of my best parts of the day in this last month has been opening the Christmas cards because there's been a real range, and some people have done like competitions in their constituency. Some people, there's just a picture of them outside of Parliament. So yeah,
quite revealing.
Yeah.
So I got the challenge. So I did one during the campaign was me with my wonderful dog Luna. That everyone said I'm actually voting for the dog. I'm voting for Luna. So this time my team thought it was a great idea if I actually took our dog Luna and now did it in front of the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine doing that, but we have got that, and that is on the front of her with me in front of the House of Parliament. So it's very sweet. I'm hoping to still keep the dog vote.
And the countdown is on to Westminster Dog of the Year show, one of my favourite highlights. So when I worked
this year.
Was it? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That was one of the highlights when I was on the Daily Politics. Right, thank you, you three. Have a good Christmas break and good luck in 2025.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.